A lot of people think they know exactly why Insomniac didn't make a new Spyro, but even the most diehard Spyro fan may not know all the details. Today, we're going to answer the question, why did Insomniac stay to make a new Spyro game? Let's talk about it.
Whoa!
What's up guys, Canadian Guy here, and I am back with a brand new Spyro the Dragon video. So before we can actually answer why Insomniac left essentially what was their baby, we need to answer why Spyro was made in the first place, or the how. Insomniac Games was developing their very first game, Disruptor, for a platform called the 3DO. It essentially was a console platform that was made by the founder of EA, Trip Hawkins. The idea is that the tech that was used in this specific home console would be licensed out to various hardware manufacturers, allowing the console's hardware to be made by companies like Panasonic, Sanyo, and Samsung. Insomniac initially bought into this idea and started development for this game. And some of you might be thinking, what's the 3DO? I've never heard of this thing before. And the reason why you probably haven't heard it before is because, one, it launched in late 1993 and then was discontinued in 1996. Two, its launch price in 1993 was $700 US. To give you a bit of a translation to what that's like today with inflation, and it's about $1,500 today. And three, the 3DO tech was sold to third parties. The companies that made their version of the console started to have to compete with each other, selling what was essentially the same system, eventually leading to manufacturers selling the consoles at massive losses and not having enough of a game library to back it up. Overall, it was just bad news bears for everyone involved, including Insomniac. Now, luckily, they saw the writing on the wall and knew that the 3DO was slowly sliding into bad juju land. So they came up with a plan to try to save this Disruptor project by shifting it from it being a 3DO-based project to going to Sony's newest console that they just launched, the PlayStation. As they presented the demo to the game and this pitch to many different people, just about everybody had turned them down. Literally, with no money left in the bank, they had one last chance with a meeting of a man from Universal who was an executive producer by the name of Mark Cerny. Now, Mark Cerny was impressed with the team and what they were able to do with Disruptor, and so they actually elected to publish Disruptor under Universal. Now, the game didn't do well in terms of sales numbers, but Mark knew that with proper advice and leadership and direction, Insomniac would be able to make something revolutionary. Cerny advised them to pursue something that was more family-friendly to make it more appealing to a broader audience. Well, Craig Stitt just so happened to have an idea that would fit perfectly: a little game about a dragon. Now, as time went on, the project would evolve, and eventually this dragon would be named Pierre, but then would be temporarily called Pete, and then being switched from being green to eventually becoming purple and becoming the legend that we know today, Spyro the Dragon. Now, our original purple lad doesn't need an in-depth explanation or introduction to everyone watching this video. Insomniac crafted and created 3 legendary games that have persisted throughout time in history. Some of the most grand adventures you could have in the 90s were with this little purple dragon. Some of the best times were had in the Dragon Realms and Avalar and the Forgotten Realms. Some of the greatest moments in gaming history were made on this little gray box called the PlayStation. Surely Insomniac would want to enter the next generation of gaming with this undeniably awesome character as their pride and joy. Surely Insomniac has some amazing future plans for him, right? Well, sadly, that wasn't the case. Insomniac not only didn't make a Spyro 4, they knew that Spyro Year of the Dragon, the game's 3rd entry, would be their last game in the franchise. So you have to ask the question, why? Why would Insomniac want to walk away from such a legendary idea that they've crafted? Well, first, we're going to talk about the most surface level reason that we have heard numerous times throughout numerous interviews, but then we're going to dig deeper as there are other factors at play here that even some of the most diehard Spyro fans may not know. So let's get the most obvious out of the way. Neither Insomniac nor Sony PlayStation actually owned the rights to Spyro the Dragon. The rights were owned by Universal. Even though it was Ted Price's idea, Ted Price used the money provided by Universal during their contract time to bring that idea to life. This has always been a bone of contention when it comes to the creation of brand new IPs, but in the end, at the moment, as the laws go, whoever funds it, owns it. PlayStation also had publishing rights, no ownership rights, basically meaning that they funded the game's advertising and actually paid to make sure that the game would stay exclusive on their platform. So all the money that Sony gave for that deal went to Universal Games. Now, Insomniac had a 3-game contract with Universal after they finished Disruptor. Once Spyro Year of the Dragon was made, their contract was up and done. So Insomniac would want to continue making one of the best platformers of all time into the new era with the brand new shiny PlayStation 2, right? Well, no, they didn't. Insomniac had felt that they reached the ends of what they could creatively do with Spyro by the time they wrapped up Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. This brought forward the infamous comment, "Spyro can't even hold a gun," which will come back up later on in the future of this video. So Insomniac knew that right when they started the development of Spyro 3, which, Universal pushed for 1 game per year, they knew that they would have to introduce brand new characters that would allow them to spice up the gameplay that they wanted to implement. Thus we got Sheila the Kangaroo, Sergeant Bird, Bentley, and Agent 9. Agent 9, in particular, in my opinion, was the key to Insomniac's next steps as a company. Once you finish the last game, there's a message from Insomniac that's basically signing off, and basically it's saying that this was their last adventure with Spyro and that they're off to go do other things. So Insomniac went off and decided to work directly with PlayStation for their next gaming adventure. First, they made a prototype simply called Girl with Stick. That definitely was, well, a thing, but it did lay the groundwork for their next adventure that they wanted to make. Now, Insomniac took what they learned from Spyro the Dragon and made a brand new IP, Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank tapped back into some of the platforming aspects that they learned from Spyro, but gave their main character, well, a gun. Looking back at that infamous comment, you can see where Insomniac's minds were and where they kind of wanted to go. Additionally, Ratchet and Clank seemed to get some of their core experience from the gameplay of Agent 9. Overall, it kind of felt like all the bonus characters that were made in Spyro 3 were basically Insomniac's way of trying to practice new gameplay styles for their future endeavors. And Ratchet and Clank just so happens to kind of feel like almost all 4 of the characters brought together in some way, shape, or form to create a brand new experience. And in 2002, the now legendary PlayStation duo was released, Ratchet and Clank. But you want to know what else happened in 2002? Spyro 4 was released. But wait, I thought Insomniac was done with Spyro. While Insomniac was done with Spyro, Universal certainly wasn't. Universal hired 2 brand new companies, Check 6 and Equinox. Now, these brand new companies were tasked to handle a red, hot, and popular IP with Spyro. And guess what? This was their very first game that they've ever developed. And while their inexperience was most definitely an issue, it was Universal that completely dropped the ball. And that ball fell down the stairs, smashed out the window, and caused a 7-car pileup. Ladies and gents, the unmitigated disaster, Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. Behind the scenes, Enter the Dragonfly kept getting rewrites, ideas scrapped, changed, reconfigured, and then given a very, very short development time to try and get the game released for the Christmas season of 2002. The final product was, well, ironically, the game somehow had more bugs than dragonflies. Now, if we compared game development to, let's say, baking a cake, Ratchet & Clank was a wedding cake made by a young, aspiring chef. And Enter the Dragonfly was the Hindenburg disaster. The funniest thing about all of this is that the original Ratchet & Clank came out on November 4th, 2002. Do you want to know when Enter the Dragonfly came out? November 5th, the very next day. Could you imagine the whiplash reaction that got? It's one of the most perfect side-by-side comparisons of amazing execution and a cataclysmic failure that we have ever witnessed. Insomniac originally nailed a grand slam with Spyro. They made 3 nearly perfect games on the PlayStation. Universal saw this and decided to just run out and set the whole field on fire and charge money to watch it burn. This game actually exposed another huge reason why Insomniac probably didn't want to re-sign with Universal, because Universal was actually terrible. Again, they pushed to have a brand new Spyro game every single year, which of course means significant crunch time from the developers. They were creatively burnt out from Universal's high demands with very low payoff. They didn't have time to come up with fresh new ideas because Universal was too busy gutting their employees for everything they're worth. In fact, the treatment got so bad, it was reported that Universal would turn off the air conditioning to the building if the devs had to stay and work after hours. And if you're being crunched to release a new game every year, guess what you're doing nearly every day? Ah, yes, because the Californian desert air in the summertime makes for real happy employees. Imagine if you were treated like that. And then after your last game releases, you're finally out of your contract, Universal approaches you and says, so you want to sign for another 3 games? No! Absolutely not! I would be running for the hills the first chance that I got to get away from them. And it wasn't just Insomniac that felt that way, but Naughty Dog as well, the creators of Crash Bandicoot. If you want to know more about Universal's poor treatment of Insomniac and Naughty Dog, you can check out this video right here. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.